Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've got to say, first of all, much as I love badgers and just about every kind of wildlife, animal, or anything whatsoever, one thing that this whole business has really brought home to me is how splendid human beings are. It really has, you know. I just believe that wildlife and conservation, etc., bring out the best in people. Unfortunately, it also brings out the worst in people. And sometimes we find it hard to express ourselves. I noticed that it's not turned the other way around now, but there was a notice over there as I walked over which said, "Stop Tory cull." No, that's a great idea. God, I don't know. But I love coming here today because I did go down to Gloucestershire, so I spent a night down there with some of the wicked people who were trying to stop this going on, i.e. you lot. And it's lovely to see people now, when have admitted it, that they haven't seen their friends during daylight for months, and they're all going around and saying, I can't see, what's this bright thing, the sun? Because they've spent a life of a badger virtually. They've been living in the dark. So, okay, I decided to stick with the celebration bit because I know we've got some very expert people, some of them friends, who will explain just about everything there is to be explained about this whole situation and so on and so forth. I would say the ceasing, or the we call it ceasing, of the badger cull, which, by the way, the last gunshot, if they wanted to, would have fired about 2 minutes ago. Oh no, 20 minutes ago, because it's 12 o'clock. I don't know if you realise that. It was supposed to stop at 12 o'clock, so you see all the shooters going, thank God, let's go to the bloody pub, you know. Even they must have been having a hard time, because we had nothing to shoot for weeks anyway. First of all, also some thanks from a bloke who's done a fantastic job, I think, throughout the whole of this. And that is Brian May. I saw Brian, yeah, round of applause. He's not used to applause. It's usually at the O2 with about 5 million people there. But yeah, I saw him the other day at an RSPCA event, and I said I was coming down here. He can't be here, but he said, and I know, very, very sincere man, he really, really, really meant it, to say thank you all to you lot. So thanks from Brian May to you. And we thank him, as you just have, yeah, basically. Let me think. It's something I just want to try and explain a little bit about is the way that the government have handled this. And I'm not talking about all the things that we know perfectly well about. You know, we've read the arguments, etc., etc. We've seen it steamrolled through. Fortunately, they've had a spokesman in Owen Patterson who's done a great job. No, he's done a great job by giving us quotes that are so bloody stupid. They've been in the front page. They really have. You know, we need people like that. But we don't need people like that in power. And I've begun to get a sort of a feeling of, okay, we know all that stuff, but do we really know how the government works in short term, how they get something done? So I'm going to give one little example, which is very personal, and this comes from the Gloucestershire cull, the one which is now ceased. And I went down there, as I say, and I met several people who were lovely people, I hate to use the word harmless, but they certainly were, in the best possible sense, not activists of any sort, any violent sense or anything like that. I met lots of people. It was lovely. There were people who were retired. There were people who, you know, in wheelchairs. It was absolutely fantastic. I met these guys, and then at the beginning of last week, I heard they'd been arrested. And so I've got to find out about this. I spoke to them at great length, so I know exactly what the situation was. And I also looked up the latest news on the badger situation. There's a couple of websites we're ticking over. Oh, something else has happened, And there we saw that news, which and a lot of you would have seen, that 3 local MPs had got in touch with the MP around here, whoever was, or the police chief around here rather, or in the Gloucestershire area, who were saying, we must have more arrests. And they got the stuff in the paper. This is how they do. If it's in London, it'd be the Daily Mail. You know, here it is. And it says, you know, local people and farmers are living in fear of these terrorists. He actually used the word terrorists about people who were on Badger Watch. I don't know if anybody here, so far I haven't heard of anybody living in fear, and I'm sure they're not. If anything, they might be living in fear of being shot at night if they go for a walk in the woods, but basically that was what they said. And so that was something, the way the government spin it to try and turn the local people against them, against us, if you like, and then also pass it on to the police. The police response was, all right, we see we ought to do this, yes, we better had, the government have asked us to, told us to, in effect, and doubled the number of policemen out. And that happened about Wednesday or Thursday last week. And then I got a phone call from a friend saying that 2 of our companions, as it were, from that group had been arrested. Well, first of all, you've only got my word for it, but I promise you there was nothing remotely terrorist or violent about these 2 guys. One of them was not in the best of health. He has to walk with a stick, got a terrible back problem, has had a lot of depression and stuff like this, and he's sort of got himself out of it by taking photos of wildlife as it happened. But, you know, not a fit guy. And the other bloke also, you know, not an unathletic youngster who's going to go in under cover of dark and smash up the cages and this sort of thing. No, they weren't doing anything like that. But because the police had been told make more arrests, these 3 were on Badger Watch, coming from a set, walking on a perfectly normal road. 8 policemen in a van jump out, grab hold of them, take them off to Cheltenham Police Station. Whereupon they were actually charged eventually with conspiracy to damage badger cages, which in itself, how do you conspire? You know, give me a break. Do they all sit there with stockings on their heads and go, what should we do? Oh, quiet. Going to go to badger cage. What? Yes. Nail clippers, no. Head sledgehammer, something like that. You know. It's nonsense. It's just a silly thing. But one of them was kept in jail for 22 hours. The other guy was with the bad back was eventually released on the appearance of a doctor because he tried to take his medication and he wasn't allowed. He said, no, we can't do that. Got to have a doctor here. So the doctor comes and says, eventually, he says, you cannot throw this man in the cells. You know, he can barely stand up. You mustn't do this. So eventually he got sent home, but they confiscated his mobile, which they have still got. So if he's rung any of you, you're going to get the plod coming round soon. And they wouldn't let him in home. His wife's at home wondering what the hell's happened to him. The other guy, as I say, was there for 22 hours. So I wouldn't say this, there was no violence or anything, and as they said, and I think it's all been alluded, the police themselves were almost going, I don't know, but we're just following orders, and that's what they have to do, and that's how a government sets up one group against another, how it will set up protesters, perfectly legal protesters, against the police, and then there's a few people in this group start sort of feeling the police are the villains. They're not. The police aren't the villains. In general, the farmers are not the villains. There's only one set of villains in this, and that is the government. Yeah. Without any doubt. Is that my time up? And finally, because I dare say Simon might touch on this as well, this is a specific thing to Badger Cull, but we really do have a government here that I think is absolutely death to the countryside and wild animals and so on and so forth. And I mean literally death in many cases, but there are going to be many things. Things they've already done, like you get that situation, they find it's generally discovered which of the pesticides is affecting the bees. As one country refuses to ban it, that's Britain. Cameron, no, we won't do that. We don't know. Fortunately, he's instructed by the European Union to sort of, no, you've got to. So thank God they did. That was one thing. We've got High Speed 2 coming up. Now there's a good one, which I think is a massive scar on the countryside. Why the heck nobody can ever convince me that a couple of businessmen wishing to get to Birmingham 10 seconds quicker is actually worth wrecking the country for. I just don't see it. And that's another one which will come up. There's any amount of them. There's also around the shooting industry. There's some shocking things which are allowed to go on with their compliance. The poisoning of raptors and so on and so forth. Make no mistake about it. This cabinet has got about 10, 12 old Etonians in there. They're all very rich people. They made the money in the city, know what I mean, probably illegally, God knows. We read this all the time. They're a bunch of liars. So there will be more to come. Let this simply be a template. Let's make sure the next phase we're still there and they realise, for God's sake, they're very good at U-turns. They did several last year, so let's have another one. I must go. No, I mustn't. I'll just stand down there and listen to somebody else. Thank you.